What up, what up, what up? Welcome back to Pnoid News. Man, listen, so all right. I had a dude hit me up about a political project, right? And he enjoyed my perspective and work on things like Curtis Yarvin. I'll be honest, I consider myself a political cartographer, right? What I do is I kind of like I'm trying to figure out a map of how politics and power actually works, right? I mean, like how things really move. It's just basic geopolitics type of things, right? But in reality, you're showing like where and how does the power actually move around inside of things, right? From institution to institution, you know what I mean? All this type of shit. And in doing so, right, this guy here hit me up and he goes, man, listen, I really like your perspective on Yarvin, your reaction, all this type of things, right? Da, 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 right? I'm like, hell yeah, right? And so I was talking to him and he's real like autistic scatterbrain type of dude, right? But like he's real sharp. As most autistic scatterbrain motherfuckers are, they just got a lot of shit and they're having a hard time putting it all out at once and like organizing and collating the data, right? So what I wanted to do was I wanted to stand here and actually, you know, what I mean, bring it to you because I already watched this on my way home from work, right? While I was working today, because he sent it to me earlier, and you know, I'll be busy, you know what I mean. But like sometimes when there's a dude who, you know, what I mean, has some stuff, and I mean, maybe you might want to throw him some perspectives and throw him, you know, what I mean, some ideas about things, right? And share with them, you know, what I mean, things that you gleaned off of others or whatever the case is, whatever you learned, wisdom, yada, yada, yada. Iron sharpens iron. You know what I mean? So, without further ado, man, listen, this shit's like an hour long, and there's another half-hour video after this, right? But we're gonna do this hour one right now. Let's get into it. You know what I mean? I'm gonna leave the link in the description. Anybody wants to go and watch this, check out his channel. Make sure you go sub. You know what I mean? So, like, anybody, because he's actually building a thing called Manhattan Project Part Two. He wants some help with. If you are a guy who can do computer stuff or write or, you know, I mean, if you're like miserable in your life, ad hoc, you hear me? Ad hoc, do you hear me? TK, do you hear me? You know what I'm saying? Right? These might be things that you might want to go check out. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day. So let's get into this.
This is my first video. This is the introduction to a project I've been working on for the last 2 years. Very simply, it's called Human General Intelligence, and it's many things, but it's presenting, an applied political theory of everything. So what's the kind of what am I going to discuss in this video, and sort of what am I looking to do? So basically, what this video aims to do is supposed to be a recruitment video. What I'm looking to do is I'm looking to put together a team. That team is supposed to kind of work with me to create like the final stage of like the pre-planning, of a Manhattan project. And the aim of the Manhattan project is to create human general intelligence. Human general intelligence, in this case, is sort of like the negentropic sort of like institutional infrastructure, that will install a new political party in the United States government and then support that party with the requisite institutional infrastructure, to reorient society from a no to a yes. That's like I'm saying a bunch of super fancy words, but basically, and this is what this talk is going to go into. But basically, the idea is that like, if you want to sort of reorient society from a state of no to a state of
All right. I don't want to hear any likes and shit in the goddamn comment section. All right, because he's gonna say like. It's cool. All right. He has a lot of shit on his mind. I mean, he has to get off, and he's reaching. And I mean, for words on a regular basis because he has so much stuff. He's trying to process it and put it into this video without actually writing out a script, which I personally think he should have did. You know what I mean? But whatever. You know what I mean? Like, he should have made a manifesto. But like, I got you. You know what I mean? I get where you are. You know what I mean? So let's, let's keep going though. You know what I mean? I don't want to hear no likes and ahs in the goddamn comment section. All right?
of yes, like what you need to be good at doing is like you actually just need to be so good at building institutions that it's kind of unrecognizable. And so if you think of the process of installing a new political party in office, if you think of the process of installing a new president in office, if you think of those acts as institutions, no different than like the education bureau is an institution. Like what you need to be able to do, you know, is you just need to be unbelievable at institutions. And so human general intelligence is the name kind of the system that supports sort of like these institution building capacities. And in order to build that system, we need the equivalent of a Manhattan Project effort. In order to produce that Manhattan Project, the correct way, it needs to be scoped properly. I've scoped it properly, but basically, I'm looking to put together a team to accelerate, the scoping process so that we can actually go out and put together this Manhattan Project and reorient society from a state of no to a state of yes. Yeah, and so this video is sort of talking about that at the highest level and sort of talking about what I'm looking for in terms of a team. So today the state of society is a no. You have a lot of people that kind of talk about this from a lot of different levels. Everyone sort of has their angle. I don't need to harp on this too much. I think if it's one thing that we're all in agreement, it's just the society is a no. As I'll talk about a little more, I think like pretty consistently it's been a no. Throughout history, it appears like it's been a no. And it's sort of hard to sort of like be able to criticize a category where there's not an equivalent. Um, you know, there's no equivalent category of society for us to sort of like do some cross disciplinary analysis. For example, if I were to say like that, I think like politicians are incompetent compared to professional athletes. Like that's an example of like a cross disciplinary analysis we can make where we could say, okay, you know, politicians just like are not that great if we compare them to like the quality of performance in a field like professional athletes. There is nothing to compare society to the way we can compare politicians to professional athletes, but I think as I'll get into a little more, I just think like the state of society is a no. I do not see a group of people that are flourishing. I do not see sort of like bright thoughts about the future. I don't see anything where I don't see a ball. I don't see anything but a huge ball rolling down the hill. Does that mean that I think things are like as bad as people think? No, I don't think that. I think things are actually just like way more mundane than people think. Um, and I think a lot of sort of critiques on society or the government are sort of like blanket, like they're bad without sort of like paying due respect to like how amazing it is that it works as well as it does, and despite all its flaws, like how actually unbelievable the U.S. government is. And so I think like you kind of have to both say that it's no, but paying like equal respects to the fact that it is actually pretty good. All things considered is important, and then sort of like the most honest way to critique it is to actually to offer an alternative, and that's what this project will do, and sort of that's sort of what here to talk about. But yeah, I think society is a no. And so that very simply means like the goal is society is a yes. And like what does yes mean? I think like it means that like unrecognizably, like we look around and we say like this is a place of like better human flourishing, and just like that just like people are more alive, people are more vibrant, there's more life in people are living longer, but and sort of people are just better physically, spiritually, and sort of with equal respect to, not with equal respect, but with like a shit ton of respect for all living things.
Okay, so all right, the no and the yes. All right, so the no and the yes politically is a democratic idea, right? So basically, you want to orientate society from where it is today, which is most people just say no about everything, to like it being yes. So like we all support government infrastructure and the institutions, and the idea is that we're moving forward in a positive path, right? And this used to be a thing much more than it is today, right? So back in the 1940s through 70s, everybody who got elected, other than Harry Truman for the most part and JFK, were elected by like a really large majority, right? So like if you look at the old electoral maps, right, as it were, right. Um, all right, so like, look, this here is Nixon. There goes JFK. There goes Johnson, right? So, and this is what people say when we're going from like a no to a yes, right? In the end of the day, like, so you want to go back to a level where you have the majority of people are willing to, you know what I'm saying, like vote or like accept or kind of ride with the ideology of, the powers that be. It's today is not that day. We are much more divided than we used to be politically. So and trust in the institutions in our country is at like an all-time low, right? At the end of the day. So like back in the day when they were handing out polio vaccines, they were pumping everybody through like when they everybody went to school, like just right, went down the line, when you were in school and everybody got these shots. Why, like all of my parents, anyways, like all the boomers, they have, that little mark right there on their arm where everybody got their vaccines at, right? Because they did them all at once in school, right? Today, if they stood here and tried to give you fucking kid a shot in school, like shit, like motherfuckers would lose their mind at the end of the day, right? But these are the type of things that like we're talking about when we're going from like a no to a yes. All right, so let's keep rocking.
A lot of sort of like what political debates get into are sort of like based on this like idea that we either have to have one thing or another thing, like there's budget in one place to work on this issue versus that issue, and it's sort of like the hidden assumption when we sort of have these sort of like societal debates is that like the knob on competence cannot be sort of it cannot sort of be moved. And basically, what I'm going to talk about here is sort of like if you increase competence like completely, then I think like a lot of these sort of like political debates like aren't real. And so I think both the goal is to build a society in which everything is yes, but like more importantly than that, what you're looking at, if you just increase the competence, I think like a lot of these sort of debates or conversations are just like completely irrelevant. And so I think like if we want to build a society that's a yes, like there's sort of like three ingredients that need to happen.
I'll be honest, I don't even think it's competence in the end of the day, right? Because like you can be, and this is Machiavelli said this, like in the Prince, right? You can make all the proper moves, and if it's just not your time, it's not your time, right? So, like, I think what the number one problem we have is, right, and especially like right now, as we're going through this period of transition, right? We've just went through the most expansive, like, uh, period of population growth that the world's ever seen, right? You know what I mean? Right? Where we went from like in the 1700s, like 1 billion people on this earth to today, where it's like 9 billion. Like this is something that we've never, like seen in the history of the world, right? So like what we're talking about, like what you're talking about right now is the fact that like people just aren't adapting to like how a new world works, right? And all of our institutions and all of our principles are based off of something that just doesn't exist anymore, right? So, like for instance, if you stood here and you had, like these institutions put into place, in 1900. right? In the end of the day, right? Like, look at the fucking population growth, right? So, like, all these institutions made sense back in the 1920s and 30s, but it just doesn't make sense anymore when, like, things are evening off, and especially in the Western world where people are evening off. So that means less taxpayers. And then you have the product. My cat is over here doing ridiculous things, right? Then you have like the population as a in general thing, right? In America, like the productivity in America and the productivity in the West as a whole, right? We're seeing kind of diminishing gains at this point, and robots don't pay taxes. That's a bit of an issue. In the end of the day, like that's an actual real issue. So like these institutions, which basically what the government's really good at is taking money from one group and giving it to another, right? Or redistributing wealth, as it were. That's what governments do. They take wealth and they take wealth from one group of people or a whole bunch of people, whatever it is. And they spend it on infrastructure or like whatever it is. And it's still like a spreading out of wealth to build for future gains, right? Which would be like roads, bridges, water systems, all these type of things, right? Conserving our natural resources, right? When you have institutions that are set up for this exponential long-term growth that isn't happening anymore, and you have more baby boomers or more retirees than you've ever had, and you have less family ties and community because of like our system of capitalism, is what it does. It destroys the bonds of humanity in order to be able to atomize you, to turn you into a proper robot. This is a problem, right? At the end of the day, so this is, and like I don't like the whole ideology of like communism, capitalism, socialism. It's all just ways of distributing goods. At the end of the day, like I really don't give a shit. Like I'll even treat it as a religion. I'm not that type of guy, right? I'm just not that type of person to treat it as a religion. I apologize. So like everybody goes, "Oh, are you a cop?" No, I just, bro, no. Like I just see it as an economic thing. It's numbers on a fuck screen, bro. I don't really care. I don't really give a shit what system we're in. Like I'll thrive no matter what happens because I'm that type of person. All right, I'm always good. But all right, man, listen, let's get back to the fucking video.
The first is we just need a full regime change. What that means is like we just need a completely new set of elites that are installed in in a place of power. That looks like like a new a new group of politicians. And sort of like within that just like a straight up new group of elites. That should not that's pretty straightforward. The second is like those new that group of elites, they need to build new agencies, right? So like like if I don't know exactly what agency is in charge of like like the prison system, but like whatever that agency is, like it has to.
That would be the Department of Corrections, right? And it depends on like what level you're talking about because again, like each state has its own Department of Corrections, right? And then every county has its own Department of Corrections. And then you also have like the Justice Department, right? It's all mixed up, right? At the end of the day, there's a lot of different parts of this, and each one are underneath a different brand. You know what I mean? Right? So like all of this, like all of these agencies, like I think you're missing the forest for the trees, man. I really do. Like I think you're thinking inside of the box too much, right? Like I'll be perfect. I really do think you're thinking way too far inside of the box. And so, like, I think what you're doing is you're standing here and you're thinking about this from an aspect of, you know, where we are today, as opposed to like what this should evolve into, right? Like, I really do think that like, and we should be evolving into, like separate nation states as an in general thing, right? Because it doesn't make any sense for us to be one giant conglomerate. Like, that's why the federal government doesn't work because like it's never meant to uphold all of this, right? Like what we're doing is like our government doesn't run societal institutions. If that makes any sense, right? Like you don't really have societal institutions. So you have a Department of Education which says like you have standards you have to meet. Now you meet the standards. It's completely up to you, like what books you use, what teaching methods, all these type of things, your recommendations, right? But it's not like a nationwide thing, right? And even if it was a nationwide thing, which is half the fucking problem a lot of the times, is the fact that you do have these nationwide programs that end up screwing up. Places where like you need, for instance, in like urban communities, it'd probably be better off for you to have the males and the females split up, right? And then, you know, for you to be able to stand here and, you know, actually test the kid and see like, hey, look, you know, we need to build you up from, you know, like you can't be just service sector. Like, you need to be manufacturing. Like, you need to be agrarian. You need to like do trades and all this type of stuff. You need to push these people towards these type of things, right? The individuals who don't have like that home life that's going to allow them to be able to, you know, what I mean, like go further in like college and deal with other things, right? So all of these institutions, like, yeah, they're dysgenic, but the reason they're dysgenic is because you're trying to rule over too much, right? Micromanaging systems is never anything that human beings are good at, and the fact that they change constantly because you're dealing with animals, right? And listen, again, like geography is an important thing. It's real. Like I know, like everybody wants to pretend geography is not real. I know we're all like real good little liberal people, right? But geography is a real thing. You know, what I mean, like the Earth and like how you live, where you live. Is it cold there? Is it hot there? These are fucking huge things, right? Like, there's a huge difference between somebody who lives in New York, where you know part of the school year you're going to school and it's dark, and you get out of school and like about like an hour worth of sunlight before it gets dark again, right? As opposed to Florida or Texas, where you know it's 80 degrees all year round, 100 degrees some parts of the year. You got monsoons and hurricanes you got to deal with. There are all types of things. In the end of the day, that like you have to really look at. You know what I'm saying? So, all right, let's keep going though, man. We're gonna keep rocking on this.
It has to go, and like we need new ones, right? Because like fundamentally, you know, like the you know, and just to take a step back, it's like, you know, the you know, society is, you know, you can look at it many ways, but ultimately it is a system, and the system that has the biggest impact on like society is the United States government, and the United States government as a system is pathogenic, right? Like if you look at the United States government as like if you were to model it as a person, you would say that the government is, you know, it's sick, it's feeble, it's weak, it doesn't look healthy. Um, and you know, and what the United States government is like it's a bunch of agencies, and like those agencies are like in charge of like kind of creating this sort of like invisible infrastructure that's supposed to like create like environments for people to like live flourishing lives, and like this is not happening, and when this does not happen, it not only sort of like affects our country, but you know it sort of, you know, it affects everywhere, right? And so you know the biggest lever to reorient, you know, society from state of no to state of yes is the United States government. The United States government needs to be needs to be fully reoriented. That requires a regime change. Specifically means like shutting down and opening up new agencies. And you know, I think if you follow sort of like political discourse, like, you know, or quote unquote dissident discourse, whether it's like a Yarvin, a Vivek, or like a Trump, you sort of like see this, you sort of see this like, to varying degrees, you sort of see this sort of like rhetoric. But you know, where I come to differ and like why, you know, I'm not trying to build a political party. Rather, I'm trying to build a Manhattan project to then create the like institution infrastructure, and then think about, you know, build a political party is sort of, you know, is where I differ, and sort of, you know, where I go to the third point. And that's that these like agencies actually have to work really well. Meaning like, you know, like again, if we think about like the prison system, it's like, you know, if we were to like actually think about like rebuilding sort of the prison system, like, you know, like we would actually like the amount of competence that would be needed, it's like we would need an organization that moved as fast as like Uber, and like, you know, had sort of like the research capabilities of like, you know, I don't, like a Mitre, or like, you know, and like sort of was like as good at like quality in their product as like Apple. And like, you know, they would need to, you know, look at sort of like what the prison system is like end to end, you know, which includes things looking at like the relationship between like architecture and sort of like mental health, which means looking at things like our legal system, which looks at things like, you know, even understanding like what the objective of the prison system is, like, you know, it looks at things that like, you know, the relationship between like, you know, the like materials used in buildings, and sort of like the quality of the individual.
Well, again, we get back to like the entire purpose of the prison system, right? Legitimately, is to like stand here and lock up individuals that don't match inside of the system, right? It's not like the prison system isn't like actually made for like criminals, right? It's I don't even know how to put it, man. Legit, like our prison system is ridiculous. Like they're like our prison system is actually one of the worst in the entire world, right? At the end of the day, and it's because it's completely overpopulated. It's not, I mean, properly guarded. There's no actual rehabilitation happening. They stop letting people get, I mean, college degrees in jail, which ends up, I mean, canceling out their future. And even when people do get out, we have this system that allows businesses to be able to look at your criminal history as part of a job prospect, right? Even though you've already served your time, like there's it's this is a system wide problem, right? This isn't just like the prison system, right? In the end of the day, this is a issue of the god of our system, right? Is GDP number go up? That's literally the god of our system, right? In the end of the day, like that's if you ever want to find out, you ever want to like just measure and see like why people are actually doing what they're doing and not just go like they are doing what they're doing. Like the reason is because GDP number go up. That's just reality. And I mean, I know it seems like, I mean, that it shouldn't be that way, and it should. I'll be honest with you. It should not be that way. But that's just what it is. It's just that GDP number go up all the time, right? And if it doesn't make GDP number go up, then they don't do it, right? So we have to stop measuring for business growth and capital and measuring for, like how valuable things are, right? Goddamn cat is biting my leg right now because it's upset I stopped petting it. Right. But like again, it's just GDP number go up. That's all that they know. That's all that they care about. That's what they're measuring for. That's the measurement of the entire government. And this is why like a lot of these things seem like, I mean, they're pathogenic, as you say. I say dysgenic, I mean, whatever the case is. Right. That's why these institutions don't work, is because they're measuring for things that, just don't, I mean, really matter. I mean, in the end, the things that aren't good for human beings as a thing. We're trying to do the most for the most amount of humans, but again, like we should be looking at the evolution of our country and saying, like, okay, well, this landmass probably shouldn't be one landmass. I mean, like we should probably be ruled by like cultural institutions that I mean go with each different place that we are, right? We should probably be like having city states, but instead, like we have this massive military and this massive government structure that just reaches tentacles into everything. They go like we should all be, I mean, like one thing. That's not how, I mean, like history or nature works. Like this is historically ridiculous, right? We should be splitting up into different places, and we're trying this federal system, which well, let's be honest, that's an empirical system. You know what I mean? Right? You're like, oh man, it's a federal system. No, it's a goddamn empirical. It's an imperial system. What I mean? At the end of the day, that's what this is, right? Because nobody can leave. It'd be different if we had the opportunity, and this is what it is. This is a lot of it too. Is the fact that like there's no options. And you can't just go like, hey man, I don't want to do this anymore, right? There's no option for that. There's no option for going like, yeah, I don't want to be part of this anymore, bro. Like, you're like let's leave this country. That option doesn't exist. And I mean, these are the type of things that like I think that like we should really be thinking really hard about. I mean, about like, oh man, listen, like we're all better if we stick together. Like, yeah, you're not wrong financially, biologically, spiritually. I mean, no, no, that's not true. Biologically, like we might be way better if we split up. Spiritually, we're probably way better if we split up because we'll have better families, better communities, better cultural institutions, right? That end up breeding better humans. We'd be able to have more of a say of like what we can do without having these rules, without having the Supreme Court telling us what we can and cannot do. So let's keep rocking, no man. Let's keep rocking.
And sort of like looks at things like the relationship between the prisoners and the prison guards. Like there's just so many different facets to be that these like that things need to be looked at properly. and done with just like an amount of just like amount of energy that like frankly is just completely unrecognizable today. And that's just like a single agency, right? And they need to and they need to do that, and they need to be able to consistently do that, and they need to like both be really right the first time and also know that they're going to be wrong the second time. Or rather they're going to be wrong, and because they're going to be wrong, like they need to be in a way in which they can sort of reorient so that they're continuously like evolving and changing, right? If you think of an institution as a learning organism, most institutions die when they're stop able to when they can stop learning. And so like what's really important here is like that they can actually just learn, or rather so that they can actually like work really well. And so in summary, we have, three ingredients. Like, one is we need a new regime. Two, that regime like needs new agencies. And three, like most important, and this is like something that people just like really are not focused on, is that like agencies like actually need to work really well. And so this is a problem. This is this last part is a problem, right? Like this is the part that's like hard, right? Like agencies actually work really well. Like, you see, in recent, history, you see like in Singapore, you see in El Salvador, I think the other one, Rwanda, you saw with like FDR, you see people being able to do this and this, right? Like a bunch of new people entering government, and they like, they open up new shops, right? But like no one has actually solved, like agencies like actually working in like a real way, right? And what that really means is like at the core is like we do not know how to build non-pathogenic institutions. We actually do not know how to build human systems that over time do not go to shit, right? Like if you look at sort of like if you look at a company like Google, if you look at a company like Facebook, like what you see over time is that these companies like they become pathogenic. And what I mean by pathogenic is like again, if you model them as people, like they actually they get sick. Their capacity to be agile, their capacity to like flourish, it goes down. These institutions, they get worse. They do not attract better people year over year. Their quality like does not improve. No one has like a deep belief that like Facebook is going to be around 300 years from now, right? We don't have many institutions, if any, like today in the US that like we're thriving 150 years from now. And then you could sort of have this comment of like, well, technology changes, and so institutions like can't keep up with that.
Okay, so all right, look, the reason why we can't have non-pathogenic institutions is because institutions are like fundamentally based on people, right? And like let me throw this thing back up, right? The amount of people change, right? Like this estimate for the future of 10 billion people is not going to happen. It's probably going to end up teetering around like 8.5, maybe 8.75, and then it's going to go down because like China by like 2050 is probably going to lose half of its population. So this idea this idea that like things are always the way they are is wrong, right? It's the equation of like the speed of light, right? The speed of light's a constant. No, it's not. Right? It's enacted by gravity, right? And I mean, it's enacted. It has. Like it slows down and bends around things, right? So it's not a constant, right? And measuring as a constant is going to end up having you have a variable in your equation that doesn't work, right? Probably speed of light's probably a terrible way to put that, to be honest with you. But neither here nor there, right? It's kind of, again, this is a variable in your math that doesn't work, right? And that's the problem in the end of the day. So having non-pathogenic institutions just means not having institutions. Like, can you name an institution that still exists from like 1,000 years ago, other than like the Catholic Church, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, religions? That's about it, right? There's no institutions that last that fucking long. It just doesn't, right? Because institutions have to change when things change, right? Institutions have to change when geography changes, when people change, technology changes, right? At the very core essence of things, like the institutions that were in Mount Vesuvius, they're not there anymore. Why? Because the fucking mountain exploded. You know what I mean, right? Like that's how things work. Right? Things come, things go. This is just how it operates. And the problem isn't that we don't know how to build non-pathogenic institutions. It's that we don't know how to get rid of them. That's the issue, right? Real shit. That is literally the issue. That's the major problem that we have in our society is that we can't get rid of institutions, right? When an institution becomes pathogenic, like we know how to deal with that in the private sector, it goes bankrupt. I mean, the public sector, throw more money at it. Like the Postal Service. Postal Service is the most pathogenic institution in the country, right? Or the IRS, one of the two, right? IRS is probably worse, but I'll say the post office because it affects more people, right? The reason why it is that we're having this massive problem in the transportation, logistics industry, all these type of things is because of the fact that the post office sets a super low floor, right? Like, how can you really compete if they can move a package across the country for $1? And then you're not making any money, right? Like you're holding down other people from doing so. Why? Because like you're paying your guys a pension, you're paying like government's funding their institution. This is the problem, right? In the end of the day, and I understand like you need things like mail delivery. I get this mentality, but like these are institutions that are impossible to get rid of because there's a lot of people relying. There's like what almost like 1 million people that work for the post office. And you don't even count all the carriers and shit. I mean, the private people who move things from place to place on contracts, right? And this is the issue is that nobody wants to we have a major problem with getting rid of bad institutions, right? We just don't know how to get rid of them. That's what really needs to happen is we need to get rid of bad institutions. Man, listen, I'm gonna keep rocking on this because I'll be honest, this is gonna be a long goddamn video.
That and so they shut down and new institutions open, but that is the problem that I'm talking about, right? These institutions do not know how to sort of adapt and sort of like both grow in size and sort of be nimble enough to sort of adapt and learn and grow and sort of not become um, pathogenic over time, right? And I think like I'll talk about this a lot in a lot of different ways, but because this is what I work on. But like, if you can't figure out how to build like a high performing like institution in a repeatable and sort of scalable way and ensure that that institution does not become pathogenic over time, then you actually have no shot of changing society from a no to a yes, right? With yes being, sustainable, right? Like, sure, sure you can bring in an FDR and or you can bring in, a Lee Kuan Yew, and that person can maybe change things for like a few decades or a little bit more than that. But like ultimately, like the history of society is just kind of like a bunch of people, failing over the long term, meaning like failing to like ensure that like, the spiritual kind of physical, like mental, emotional health of their people over like, hundreds or thousands or dare I say millions of years, like were like, like actually sort of taken care of and done in a way that like worked. Did it like it like was sustainable, like where like there wasn't sort of like mass chaos and mass tragedy and sort of people taking advantage of each other. Like it just sort of hasn't worked, and like at its core it's like we actually don't know how to build institutions, whether it's religious, business, government, that just like don't go to shit over time, right? Like this is the problem. If you can't figure out how to do this, then like if you can't figure out how to build a government system that does not become pathogenic over time, which they all have, then like what are you doing? It just doesn't work. And the funny thing is, right, is that like, not funny thing, the sad thing is like actually like over time we get worse and worse at running institutions. And so if you dial the time back to I think like the 60s or 70s, there's this guy Douglas Engelbart who basically kind of he created the mouse, like early internet pioneer. He saw this. He saw to realize, and you can read his work, and he's basically like, yeah, like our problems are getting like out of hand complex, and we need completely new tools to be able to think about it. And so we need to sort of like, think about our, sort of like operations infrastructure like in a completely new way. And sort of, one of the things he sort of pointed out, and this is like really important, is that like, there's a direct sort of like race between like the quality of our tools, our technology, and sort of like how good we are at like organizing, and how good our organizations are. And sort of like, and sort of like, the gap between like the power of our technology and our like capacity to organize is just like really important. And so like, every year we're getting worse and worse at running institutions. Like, if you were to compare like, Microsoft's executive team and then compare it to Uber's executive team, I don't think there's a single person that would say like, Uber's executive team was actually more competent than Microsoft's executive team. There's not a single person.
Well, I mean, yo, listen, and I 100% agree with you, right? Like the more technology you have, like, so this translates like this ideology of like technology, I mean, being better for you as a society, making you like more productive and better, right? It works really well in a couple of places. Number one, for like your basic workers, right? I mean, like, yeah, the more technology you have, the less work your workers actually have to do, right? This cat's ridiculous, right? But like the more technology you have on the battlefield, like the better you are at war, right? For the most part, right? I mean, like you have like people with guns are going to beat people with bow and arrow most of the time, right? Depending on the gun, I mean, like you're talking about like a musket or like a man, listen, them things with like an Elmer Fudd gun, yeah, you might not do as well against like a Zulu warriors, right? I mean, you can just keep, you know, they can fire like 10, I mean, or 10 or 11, 12, 30, 40 arrows a minute, right? If they have a full quiver, like, yeah, you might get your rugged ass handed to you, right? But like, the more amount of technology you have as a politician, like you end up having like an overload of like information, right? That's a problem, right? And not only that, but it's the personal relationships that you end up forming, right? And you being able to stand here and talk to other people and talk to other parts of the company and see things with your own eyes that you're not going to notice with the numbers, right? These type of things get missed when you have too much technology. Like when you can get on a Zoom call with somebody, I mean, from China, right? And like behind them, it's just like a normal apartment and everything's fine. But outside, like they're scraping like gutter grease out to put into some soup. These are things that you're not going to know, right? Because there's no measurement for this in your metrics, right? So this is the problem. Like having to go there, get hands on, and find out exactly what's going on. And I mean, is a whole lot better than measuring it through like any technology, right? In the end of the day, right? It's kind of one of those, like how much, like when you look at your car, right? Like there's no measurements for how good your shocks are at the moment, right? There's no sensor for this, right? There's no sensor for like your brake line. There's no sensor for your fuel lines. There's no sensor for like like what's the quality of I mean the grease inside of I mean like your differential, right? There's like a measurement for how much grease is in there, right? Never not for how what the quality is, the viscosity, right? These are the type of things that I'm talking about, right? Like you have to get hands on and see what's going on and see what the problems really are because people will deal with bullshit, right? And overcome obstacles that you created and you don't even know you created them. So like yeah, 100%. I agree with you. Like our technology ends up, I mean, inhibiting our ability to work together as people, right? And that's something like we become entirely too reliant upon like metrics and not, I mean, actually like looking around and seeing what's going on around us. Let's keep rocking though.
Person who would say that, and like there's not a single person who would say that like FTX's executive team was like as good as Uber's. And sure, I'm like using I'm using sort of like different I'm cherry picking these examples, but we have a complete new way in like the way in which we work, the way in which we coordinate with labor, the sort of tools we use, like the whole idea of an organization, like full stack is being reinvented. And like this idea, and like they have actually just gotten, they have gotten just less, they have gotten less competent. We this is sort of a, this is like a hidden reality. And I'll record another video on like the, like the history of human kind of systems, and sort of the organization, and I can sort of kind of explain in detail like what it gets wrong, why this comes to be. I call this American business logic. Um, as sort of the core reason why we're getting worse at running, institutions. But basically, yeah, we're just getting worse at running institutions. And like, again, if we don't solve, how to build non-pathogenic institutions, like we're not ever going to be able to reorient society from a state of no to a.
Well, I mean, like, so how we used to do it, right? And this is some basic shit, right? How we used to do it was you had to live where you know, like where you were, right? So therefore, like, okay, it's this whole Thomas Sowell becoming, I mean, like a black conservative thing, right? Like, because he was a liberal, right? At the end of the day, like he was a leftist, right? And he lost his idea about like minimum wage and came up with all these, libertarian economic ideologies that became part of the Chicago School and all that type of shit by going to Puerto Rico and like getting hands on and seeing what was going on for real, right? Because you got to get past the metrics, right? And that's how we saw things is you got hands on. None of these people get hands on with anything, right? All these motherfuckers live in Alexandria. They all live in Virginia, right? Everybody who works for the federal government lives in Virginia, right? They don't live where it is that they're actually like, like ruling over, right? And this is kind of the problem. And like everybody is kind of so divorced from, like who, or like the people who like they're standing here like ruling over, the people who they're dictating to, that they don't really have, the ability to actually run anything in the end of the day, right? Because like they don't really know what they're doing. And listen, get off of my table! I swear to God, off! I swear to God, this cat. All right, man. Listen, we're gonna keep rocking. All right.
Stated yes. And so the better our tools get, right, we ironically get worse at running our institutions and organizing ourselves, right? And so like, we're in a point where like, you know if you think about something like rebuilding our legal system, if you think about something like even like launching like the NBA, or you think about, something like launching the New York Times or launching like a better CNN, like we actually like don't really have sort of like the operational capacity as like a nation to do any of those things we once were able to do. Right. And that's why you look around and you don't like, you don't see it.
I'm gonna tell you what. I was thinking about this. Right. There are things, okay, that we're still doing. All right. And it's regional shit, right? And then they end up going nationwide. For instance, I'll give you a good one. Sheets, right? Sheets is a gas station, all right? But it also has like a restaurant inside of it, right? They sell beer, things of station, whatever, gas, right? But like it's kind of like a Bucky's, but like it's the size of, like a little like two 7-Elevens, right? Standalone gas stations, right? Wait, let me think about something that y'all would know. A Circle K, right? Something along these type of lines, right? Sheets, Wawa, Rudders. All things that are, expanding into y'all shit. They come from us. Why? Because Pennsylvania is a region, right? It's Appalachia, right? It's, Philadelphia, right? It's Pittsburgh. Okay, but like these like Sheets comes out of like the Reading Allentown type of area, which is Lancaster type of thing, like Turkey Hill type of stuff, right? Turkey Hill's another one, right? We do a lot of this here, right? So they grow out a region. And again, the problem comes back to we don't have fucking regions anymore, right? Everybody's trying to be the same. That's why we can't have institutions, right? Because like in order to have a new thing, it has to be a new thing, right? The reason why we don't, have like properly built institutions, like properly expanding type of things, right, is because of the fact that like we don't have like regions for them to like mature, right, growing. Like so, up north, right, we get like these, I mean, corporate restaurants, right? They come in like Sonic or whatever, fuck, IHOP. Like we just got our first IHOP ever, right? Because they couldn't break in, right? They finally found like a truck stop that would let them be in there, right? And nobody goes there, right? Other than some like local people, but like nobody wants it shit because like we have really good local restaurants. You know what I'm saying? Um, you have to have regional growth, and then you have, you know what I mean, like, expansionary growth that becomes institutions. That's why it is we can't really build things, right? Because like you guys, like the rest of the country, you know what I mean, don't have fucking regions anymore. Like you don't have your own regional identities and like places for them to like just mature and then be shared out of, right? That's one of the reasons that you don't have these type of things. We have lots of them coming out of us all the fucking time. You know what I mean? Like, we produce them constantly. This is a normal thing for us, right? But the rest of y'all don't have these things, right? So again, we get back to like, you have to, your metrics, your measurements, your math, all these type of things, right? You have to. This is why, like, I love Yarvin because Yarvin gets it, right? Like he gets that type of shit. Go read chapter 5 and 6 of the Great Mirror, right? If you want to, like, and I'm basically making this for him, right? At the end of the day, go read chapter 5 and 6 of the Great Mirror, right? This idea of having the local autonomy and local cultures. Cultures are important because cultures are what the hell upholds your societal standards, right? And the lack thereof of culture, the lack thereof of you having is a lack thereof of societal standards, which ends up having everybody become dilapidated and relying upon fucking Doritos for food, right? Ramen noodles are not food, okay? You shouldn't be eating this shit, these type of things, right? Like you shouldn't be, out here, single momming it up, all that type of stuff, right? But like people do it. Why? Because like, you don't have any cultural institutions to uphold these type of beliefs, right? This is kind of the issue. These are things that we all discuss. Let's keep rocking, nobody.
Right? You don't sort of see anything with your eyes that looks like, there's like real, like, strong, organizational capacity. I mean, even if you like compare, like, sort of like the BLM or sort of like, feminist movements to, like, like their precedents, right? Like what you just see is they're just like way worse at being like organized, right? And even if just like the organization of these like political parties, right? It's just everything's just like dramatically unorganized. And this is like in a time where we have like the greatest technology. We have like the greatest technology ever, right? And that technology is just like extremely powerful. And if like used properly.
Okay. All right. Well, again. All right. Listen. Okay. This is the problem, economists, economists, right? At the end of the day, this is the problem. People, people. You have to look at people. It's important to look at people, right? So, like when you're talking about people, you're talking about institutions. You're talking about their institutions, right? You're talking about like the shit that they do. Like, why are things bad, right? And I just thought about this, right? Like, why is Swift terribly run, right? Like, why are all their drivers like just knocking shit over and rolling over and fucking things up? Like, why? Why is that a thing? Because they're publicly traded. That's why, right? That's why. It's why like little small mom pop carriers, whatever, like other carriers. Nobody really talks about other people like that, right? Why? Because these monster companies, right, fuck up way more. Because like they there's too much of them. They don't fucking care. They don't have any standards because like they're not serving the customer. They're serving the market. They're serving their shareholders. Right? This is the thing. And again, like, so why are fucking political parties all retardedly disorganized now? Who are you serving? Who? Who are you serving? Your mega donors? Like the big giant donors? It's not the average voter. The average voter's retarded, right? And that's the other part of this too, right? That's the other big thing about this is like, again, like when you're trying to like you have to go to the most common like basic common denominator of people, right? And you go, well, God hates gays or whatever it is, right? Whatever nonsensical dumbass bullshit. Like, why are they all completely? It's not about the technology. Technology can't help you with this, right? It can't. Like technology, it can't help you, right? You know what's gonna help you? Like having a base, Like appealing to your actual base. That's what helps you. These people don't have a fucking base. Because everywhere you go, it all looks the fucking same. There's a McDonald's, there's a Dollar General, there's a fucking, a 7-Eleven, there's, whatever, right? Come to PA, it's different. It's different here. It's real different here. Come here. It's a Sheets and, down the streets, fucking, goddamn fucking Lagueros, right? Go up there, it's fucking, fucking Roberto's, right? You can go over here, it's, fucking the Puerto Rican spot, right? It's again, you have local shit. There's Broad Street Market, there's the Amish. You have a regional base here. That's why you don't hear about our senators on ridiculous stuff, right? That's why we have a Democratic governor. I'm fucking right wing. I like him. You know what I mean? Makes sense. He's a normal person, right? We have good institutions here, like real shit. Like, you want to see a good institution? Pennsylvania Fish and Game. It's great. Does exactly what it's supposed to do. Nobody complains about him. I mean, we don't like him coming checking our fucking licenses and shit. You know what I mean? Because it's a pain in the ass. But on the same point, they're always super nice, right? And we know that they care, right? They're fellow anglers, or fellow hunters, right? They're outdoors. They love the fucking woods. They love the fucking, the natural, the DCNR. They love the natural resources, right? It's as we do, right? They understand. Listen, y'all are calls like, hey man, why are you fishing? Man, look, I lost my job. I'm hungry. Oh, word? Hey, want us to help? Want us to help throw a bucket for you, bro? We got you. That's the type of guys that these fucking are, right? We have really good institutions here. They work. Our Department of Agriculture works. They fail at a lot of stuff. Of course they do, right? Because they don't have the ability to, overstep the Constitution and Supreme Court to go onto people's land and, go kill, spotted lanternflies and stuff, right? Sorry, man. This cat keeps trying to eat my leg, right? Because I'm not paying attention to her. But, real shit. Again, you have to have a common vision, common goal, common people, common heritage, common shit. Again, you need a nation, right? We're supposed to be developing into other nations. That's what we're supposed to be doing, right? We keep trying to, fucking conglomerate this shit. That's never going to work because we're not the same. I'm from PA. You think I give a fuck about a Californian? I feel bad for the Hawaiians because they're being taken advantage of, right, by people from New York and LA. I feel horrible about that. That's terrible. That shouldn't happen to anybody because I don't want that to happen to me, right? On the same point, if California fell in the ocean tomorrow, nobody would miss them. This is the big thing, man. But we're gonna keep rocking now.
Should enable us to be so much better at organizing, not so much worse. And so all of this to say is that it's counterintuitive that we have the best tools ever and we're the least competent ever. And that sort of means that there's just a shit ton of low hanging fruit, right? There's just a shit ton of alpha to just do so much better that it's completely unrecognizable. And I think when you look at Caesar, you look at Napoleon, what you see is individuals who are able to organize things in ways that just felt truly unprecedented. It felt it just was not actually possible to organize things at the level they were just so much more competent than anyone else.
Okay, so let's talk about Caesar and Napoleon, right? Because you bring them up quite a bit, right? At the end of the day. Sorry, but let me get a snack out because I just got done working all night. Okay, so talk about Caesar and Napoleon. Here, my cat over here playing with the back. It's ridiculous. Caesar, right, as a whole, came out of the popularity, right? Popular people, the people, as in a general thing, right? And he was organizing Romans, right? They were all Roman. In the end of the day, he did what was good for Rome. And I think it's something else you're missing too, right? Okay, why does this system keep working, right? You know what I mean? And listen, I feel like my hair is fucked up. Why does this system keep working? And because it offers people something, right? Stuff. Cheap, plastic, high value added garbage stuff. And goy slop galore. That's what the system offers, right? And people like that. Get a shiny one, They want that type of shit, right? They want cell phones and computers and you know what I mean, fucking boats and cars and trucks and wheels and rims and you know what I mean, like they want all these things, right? They all been told their whole lives they're down on their luck billionaires. Well, they all want to live like Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk. They want to drive Lamborghinis, right? You know, and this is what they think life is because that's what they've been told, right? Because they've been advertised through their entire lives, right? They look at their favorite, you know, I mean, people on TV who, you know, like appeal to them, you know, whether it be LeBron James or, you know, I mean, like whoever, right? And they go like, I want to be like that guy, you know, I want to be the guy who's like that person, right? And so back in the day, you could appeal to somebody by their nation, right? Their heritage. That's hard to do today, right? Because like as Americans, like we don't really have a heritage. Right? At the end of the day, we don't really have a common shared heritage. We shared history, but like even then, that shit's like say I mean like man, George Washington was a great man in front of some black people. Like he was a slaver and he owned slaves and he raped people and all this shit, right? So like we don't even really fucking agree on our history. This is what I'm saying about nation states, right? Like you have to have a nation, right? Nation's a group of people with a shared heritage, race, history, you know what I mean, language, culture, you know, food, geography, all this type of stuff. And if you don't have like a whole bunch of things in common with other people, being able to have an institution that you're willing to live under is very hard because you're not going to feel represented by that, right? You're going to feel like it's intrusive, it's invasive on you. Unless it's offering you something. It's an important part of this, right? So, like, why are these institutions still here? Because they offer people things, you know, whether it's free gives or whether it's, we're going to keep, like, your roads maintained or your water coming to your house, right? We're going to offer you, you know, what I mean, like, whatever it is that they offer you, right? And as long as you can keep living and having, you know, what I mean, like, stuff, you're not going to care. And the only reason we're having this conversation right now is because we see through the bullshit at the end of the day and we realize that like we're not creating good people. I have a whole ass plan about this. You gotta look at my mini cow thing, right? But like, man, listen, let's keep rocking with your video.
Ever was. And so that is like, that's, the ability, the capacity to do that is there, to build like unrecognizable levels of competence is there, but it's actually, it's it's the ability to build even that much more competence is there because of how much stronger our tools are, right? um and so what I'm trying to say is basically, that we do not have to LARP. I think it was Lenin that said, like, or Stalin, who was just like, either like you conquer the system or the system conquers you. And like what we know about like human systems, right, which I talked about in the context of like institutions like companies or nonprofits or religions, right, is like systems like become human systems become pathogenic over time, right? And you can model society as a human system that has become pathogenic over time, right? Like human systems like tend to become pathogenic. Like I'll explain in a different video, like in more detail, sort of why I think that is, and the root of it, and like what's needed to sort of fix that. But like, ultimately I see this as like it's superhuman good, right? Or evil, meaning like evil is the default state. The default state of society is one of pathogenic, right? And so like, because we're now looking at the problem the right way, or so I claim, because we have amazing technology to be able to do things like we actually don't have to LARP. We don't have to like make fake attempts at reorienting society from a state of no to a state of yes. We don't have to do that, right? And again, like, I'm making the claim that sort of like all political efforts have sort of been like, like LARP fights against power, right? And I sort of like, have this slide just to sort of, show how much bigger Godzilla is than like these other attempts, right? And it's like, you look at someone like Trump, like or you even look at someone like Napoleon, and like, if you compare like the competence between like Napoleon, FDR, and Trump, it's just like it's just it's just not enough. It's never been enough. It's never been like nearly enough. And that's just because these things are deeply, deeply, deeply complicated, and so you actually need to match that complication with the right amount of competency, right? Like if I want to.
Okay, first of all, get the hell off my table. Right. Secondly, what you need is, God damn it, what you need is political will. Right. You need a mandate to do these type of things. Right. You need to be able to win every fucking state. You need to be able to go. Everybody go, yes. You know what I'm saying? Right. So like, if you can have a mandate, you can rule. But like, you're not going to rule in the end of the day, right? Like you're not gonna rule as a whole, right? If you have, you know what I mean, like your political, you know what I mean, shit look like, you know what I mean, JFK, right? Where, you know, there's a lot of people who says you're not supposed to rule, then you probably shouldn't rule, right? This is just the reality of things. You know what I mean? So I mean, this is kind of the problem of where we are right now. Like, if you don't have the political mandate to take power, right, to go like, hey, look, you know, like I have the vast majority of people behind me, then you can go in there and then you know what I mean, like destroy the institution and rebuild it from the ground up. That's the first problem, right? And I know you're going to talk about this here in a minute, you know what I mean, but like that is literally the first problem, right? Is that you don't actually have the political will or mandate. Nobody has, I'll be honest with you, since like fucking Reagan, right? Nobody has had this political will and mandate. So let's keep rocking. No man, we're gonna keep talking about this.
To run a lemonade stand, I have the amount of competency to do it. If I want to go build a rocket ship, I need, about 100,000 times more amount of competency than I need to run a.
One of my favorite phrases is what is luck, right? Luck is preparation meets opportunity, right? So I get it. You need to be prepared to be competent, but like real shit, first things first, you need the power. You go competency versus power. Maybe. Because there have been plenty of competent people who've ran, right? You know, we've had guys like Ron Paul, you know, we've had individuals who have ran who were, you know, real competent human beings. Yang, you know what I mean? For instance, another guy who like, he's like, I'm looking forward. And everybody's like, fuck you. We don't want nothing to do with you. Now that might have been because he's Chinese, right? And I get it. You know what I mean? Like we don't want to elect an Asian. I feel you. It's not even racism. It's just, you know, like we don't want to elect a Chinese person. Like I feel where you are, right? But like the thing is that in the end of the day, you know, you need to be able to stand here and take like full power. Like you have to be able to run and get the majority of the electorate behind you in order to rule, right? Because that's why these individuals aren't in power, and that's why they're not actually doing anything. Because if you come in without a political mandate to get rid of all these fucks, like if you ran and say, "Listen, I will come in and eliminate everything," and these motherfuckers come in and go like, "What?" Right? And then they go, "Yes, I will get rid of the IRS. I will get rid of like, you know what I'm saying, the Department of Education. I'll get rid of, you know what I mean, like whatever it is, you know, the political thing that you want to get rid of. You have a fucking mandate. If a majority of people go, yeah, go do it. Right? The majority of people go, yeah, go do it. Then like you'll be able to do it. You know what I'm saying? Right? Yeah, I swear to God, spray bottle. Right? So let's, you know what I mean, let's keep rocking though. You know what I mean? Let's keep banging.
Lemonade stand. Well, reorienting society from a state of no to state of yes is probably a bigger jump from, a rocket ship than a rocket ship is from a lemonade stand. And like, all I'm simply saying here is that like you need to scope out the problem and like pay respect to what the problem is, and like that just requires building like a shit ton of competency, right? Like that's the only thing that is of relevance, because if not, you're just sort of you're just sort of LARPing, right? It's like, you look at FDR, he set up a bunch of agencies, like all those agencies are the ones we have today. Those agencies are pathogenic, and like, that has created like an enormous amount of harm and damage to the people in this world, right? Like it's just bad, right? You look at like someone like Marx, he had like some, sort of like model for how you could organize society. Like, like there's definitely some good ideas in there. Like, was this idea of like posing a single system, um, without designing that system to, like experiment and sort of like self destruct in a sort of like a natural way, and sort of like like, was that, was this sort of like one like static sort of like, perspective of, communism, like was that enough to handle the complexity of the situation? Absolutely not. It seems like Napoleon, made a big sort of cultural impact and reoriented, France for a period of time. Does France look healthy today? Like, does it feel like, do the riots on the streets feel like things, does it feel like he did things in a way in which, like, his, like, I don't know if he had kids, but his great great grandkids were like guaranteed to live better lives? Like, no, I don't think so, right? And so just like none of these things are enough, and they've never been enough. And all of these sort of like just conversations about what to do or like what matters are just like completely just LARPs. And they're completely LARPs because they're just not talking about being competent enough. If I want to go play and beat LeBron James in a game of basketball, I know how competent I need to be. This is no different from that. We've like literally been sending high school basketball players to go play against LeBron and like praying that it's going to work. It's not going to work. It's never going to work. It hasn't worked, right? And that's just because no one has solved like how to not build like non-pathogenic, like high performing, like human systems. Like that, like this is just like, you can't solve this problem, you can't do anything else, right? No one's created, and again, I talked about this, but like no one has created like enough organizational competence. It's like it's literally the only thing that matters. Um, and so everyone's LARPing, and I'm gonna just sort of, just because like he's in the news, I'm gonna talk about Vivek.
If you think America's going to elect a pan-faced street shitter, you are out of your fucking mind. Like, it is not going to happen, right? We are not going to elect a Haji. Like, this isn't Great Britain, right? As much as like, yo, we are all Anglo people, right? And I mean, like, yo, no, okay, no, we are not going to elect one of them here, right? Over there is different, right? We're like literally like in Italy, India was part of their colony and all that type of shit. We don't have them same ties, right? We are not like we would sooner elect a Hawaiian, right? And like The Rock could win all day, every day, twice on Sunday. The Rock could win. We'd elect a Hawaiian. You know what I mean? We'd elect a Puerto Rican. We'd do it. You know what I mean? I mean, it'd be a little squabble. You know what I mean? It would. But like, we'd elect a Puerto Rican, right? We might even elect a Mexican. Maybe. We're not electing a fucking Indian. That's not happening, right? Like, it's just not happening, right? Yeah, no. Okay. Yeah, no.
And like this is like, this is like, of all the politicians, the person who like appears to be like the most competent, right? He's like the person who, like, if we go back to this chart, like, like he seems to have a chance of like, going from like Trump to like FDR, right? He has a chance of like becoming a mouse against Godzilla, right? And that makes him like the most competent person like in the United States today, right? Um, like, where am I? I'm going the opposite way. So yeah, so and again, like his goal is to become, his goal is FDR. But like FDR did not, it worked for a few decades, it worked for a time. He's a loved, political figure like, you know, he'll go down to history, but like he did not reorient like the country from like a no to a yes, because in order to reorient the country from no to a yes, it needs to be sustainably a yes, right? He didn't actually fix the problem, right? Like these agencies.
Are you looking for like infinity? Because like, yo, man, listen, nothing is going to last forever. All right. Like, yo, everything is, like subject to, the growth pattern, you know what I'm saying? Birth, adolescence, maturation, what is it? A convalescence and death, something like that, right? Everything has that, whether it's, the, like an institution, a person, an animal, a country, a nation, whatever it is, all of them have these things, right? And so, like, if you want to have like something that lasts like forever, like I don't know, like Greeks, China, I don't Korea, maybe I don't even then like it still didn't last forever. It's not gonna last forever. Like they have a birth rate like 0.1 or some shit, and they're like they have no babies. They don't fuck anymore, right? Like I don't know who. What do you want, right? Like decades is not bad, right? In the scope of human societal history, right? There's no empire that like we're talking about Rome for 500 years, like because there was ups and downs in that bitch too, right? It was expansionary until it wasn't expansionary anymore, and then fucking circled the drain and died. And then the Eastern Roman Empire, Ottomans, like what are we looking for here, man? Legit, you got to tell me like what it is that you're looking for, bro. Like I'll be honest with you, like what is your time frame for success? You know what I mean? Like that's kind of a good question. Like, what is your time frame for success, bro? Like, I hope what I mean. Like, you had the time to watch this whole fucking video.
That he set up like have just not, they don't work. He's not built, they're all pathogenic. They actually create, a worse, they have not, they create harm to people, right? And so like his goal is to do a better life.
Okay, well, let me say this right about FDR. Okay, well, there are institutions he created that were good. Okay, for instance, we were having a problem of farmers farming. Like it was 1200 AD, right? And they weren't doing crop rotations. They weren't, like fucking properly, like putting nutrients back in the soil, all these type of things, right? We extended the life of our soil a very long way because of him, and we're still doing it. Like we're still, like updating our ways of farming, to make not just better crop yields, but longer term success in the land, right? Now, say what you want about Monsanto chemicals and all that type of shit. I fucking hate it too, and GMO, and I fucking hate it too. But like everything's like real shit. If you didn't like GMO, you should have seen what watermelons used to look like. Real shit. Like real shit. Like you want to go back to like that? You know what I mean? Like you know what I mean? Like I understand. Like I'm a naturalist. At the end of the day, you know what I mean? Like I 100% agree with like living, on the land and things of this nature. But like I don't have a major problem with us, like cultivating better shit. I don't like the fact that you turned, like weed into heroin. Like that's probably not a positive thing. Like we probably shouldn't have weed that's more potent than fucking cocaine at this point. But this was always a process. Weed used to just be like some garbage ass swag that took the buzz off a little, took the like fucking edge off. You know what I mean? And, like then when I got it, when I was smoking it in the fucking 90s and shit, in the 60s, it was trash, right? We had to smoke like an ounce to get high, right? And then, like when I was smoking in the fucking 90s, shit, get stuck in the couch on some of that shit, right? And then today, motherfuckers turn into zombies off of that. This is a process that was going to happen. Like whether or not we scientifically did it or not, and that really didn't have shit to do with the government. That was just us, creating new shit constantly and new strains that were better and better and better through hydroponics and all that type of stuff. So FDR did things that weren't terrible, like Social Security's trash. But again, this is stuff that was invented by Kaiser. Like this was something that was necessary back then. Like let me tell you a little bit about the situation that happened. Maybe you don't know, maybe you do. The Kaiser, Wilhelm Kaiser did it in 1898, 1997, something like that in Germany the first time. That's because all the Germans had left, all the younger Germans left and came to America, and there was nobody to help the old people out. In America, you know what I'm saying? We did that shit in the 19 fucking 40s, right? After, I mean, all the young people had left the East Coast and went to the West, searching, you know what I mean, fame, fortune, gold, whatever the case is, you know what I mean, spreading across the country. And we didn't have anybody to take care of the old people. And so, therefore, old people were living in extreme impoverished conditions. Now, has it helped a lot? No. But has it helped some? Yeah. Now, was it set up for long term success? Yes, if things continued on, like we had, like, 12 billion people on the planet right now, it'd been completely successful. We kept having fucking population growth like we had. Yeah, you know what I mean? But, like, the problem is that, the boomers didn't have fucking kids, and then the millennials didn't have fucking kids, and then Gen X doesn't exist, right? And then fucking, the Zoomers are trans, you know what I mean? They're all cutting their penises off, so they're not going to have any fucking kids. So, like, it is what it is. And we try to, like, offset it with immigration, but, that takes time. How long does it take to grow a 30-year-old? I'll give you a hint. Just 30 fucking years before you become a proper tax-paying citizen. And the whole idea of payroll taxes was supposed to be temporary in the first fucking place to pay for the fucking war, and they just stayed permanently because they're fucking dumb. You know what I mean? And it gives the government more opportunities to be able to raise and lower the tax rate, to be able to have more fucking expansionary growth in the GDP in the fucking country. These are all things that, we need to have a conversation about, we need to talk about, but we don't have the ability to do so because of the fact that our government, owns the fucking media, and the media owns the goddamn government. It's all retarded. Now, are these, institutions terrible? 100% they are. Right? 100%. They're complete garbage. But, you know, we don't really have the ability to change them because, we need to go back to fucking this, you know what I mean? And, at current, we look worse than this, and I'm going to be honest with you. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's all dumb, and, it's all gay and dumb. You know what I'm saying? It's all dumb and gay right now, so that's where we are. Let's keep rocking though.
Right, and that's just it's just stupid. It's stupid, right? And so I think the appropriate sort of metaphor here is like one of the NBA, right? It's like if you look at this guy Vivek, right, like what he's doing, his like political effort, which is no different than Trump's or no different than FDR's or no different than basically the way that anyone has sort of like entered government. Maybe you could look at sort of like Lenin and like his what is to be done document is like not this, but it still kind of is like you know like all political efforts are like the basketball equivalent of like running down the court with like 10 seconds on the clock and like three defenders, and you're just like taking a fadeaway three and like praying to God you get in, right? Like meaning like like what I'm saying is like Vivek, he's winging it. I'm not saying he doesn't have a plan. I'm not saying like he isn't like a thoughtful, hardworking guy, but like he is, and but like he's winging it. He's winging it. He's not he's like he's up against like a bunch of competition. He's like he's like trying to chuck up a ball and he's like hoping it goes in. That is the conceptual metaphor like behind sort of like how he thinks about it, right? And like what it should be is like setting up LeBron to take like 15 free throw shots, right? And the difference between like running up to court, right? Like running down a court, taking a fadeaway three, and like setting up LeBron to take 15 free throw shots, like is the difference between like hoping that like you might be elected to like being so competent that like your goal is like not to get enough votes to win. Like your goal is actually just to get 100% of the votes. And like even thinking about like how you get 100% of the votes just like is a completely different sort of like system view of the problem. And like if you don't want to LARP, right, like you need to actually be so competent, right, that like you get 100% of the votes. And I'm being slightly hyperbolic, but not really, because like if you can't get 100% of the votes, and like if that isn't an operational challenge, and these are all operational challenges, like if you can't build a high performing institution that achieves this goal, right? Then like you have no shot at fixing the education system. You have no shot at fixing the prison system, and you have absolutely no shot of reorienting society from a state of no to a state of yes, right? Um,
Look, I agree with you, right? But like I think personally, right? I think we need to like really think about this in a proper way, right? In the end of the day, like I think we'd have a better chance, like real shit, of I mean, like you could not catch 100% of the votes in all of this, but you can catch 100% of the votes in I mean, part of this. If that makes any sense, right? Like you could have 100% of the votes in like the Hortlands or Texas or the Deseret or the Big Sky or Lakelands or the South or Appalachia or Anarcho England or Ecotopia, right? You could do this if you only had to win some of that. You could not do that if you have to win all of that. There's no way. Like it's again, we're not talking about it's not a competence problem. Like it's really not, right? This we're no longer talking about a competence problem, right? In the end of the day, we're just not talking about that. What we're talking about is a problem of scale. The scale's too fucking large. Like it's too goddamn big. It's literally predicting like throwing a bucket of water up in the air and where every drop of water is going to fucking go. Nobody's that fucking. There's no computer that's that competent. It's just not fucking possible to win that much. It's just not, right? Real shit. Like you're just. There's nobody who could fucking do this. You know, maybe The Rock. Being honest, like maybe The Rock, right? The weirdest fucking cat. I swear to God, the weirdest cat that's ever existed in the history of cats, right? Like, yo, I had like a flower vase over here with flowers in it, right? Because I like things to smell good. You know what I mean? In my motherfucking house sometimes. You know what I mean? Just in general for me. You know what I mean? For bitches to come through, that type of thing. And literally, like, yo, the cat pulled the flower the fuck out of the goddamn motherfucking out of the fucking vase and motherfucker drinking the water out of the vase. It's not like it's like a fishbowl thing. You know what I mean? Like it's not a tall vase, but it's just fucking weird. Anyway, right? Yeah, like again, like I don't see anybody winning that much of the fucking like it just no, right? Real shit. Again, we could do this. We have a better chance at this. Like this is what needs to happen. This is what like this type of mental is what needs to happen. Right? But like we don't have the balls for this. This is the problem. Like yo, we want to do all this shit. You want to be super like do that. That's how you become confident, right? Let's rock.
um, and this idea, right, of sort of taking this like fadeaway three, right, which is sort of all political efforts and just like going for it, and just sort of like this like, just like like overly bought sort of like Williams James like pragmatics, just like like screw the sort of like
Let me say this, right? Caesar, Napoleon. What'd they do? They're fucking generals. They went to war, son. When you're like, they went to war. They had enemies. And this is some real shit. Like, bro, like how did motherfucking like this happen? Or wait, not this. How did this happen? All right, hang on, let me get ready. No, no, there we go. How did this happen? You know how this happened? I'll be honest. I know exactly how this is the fucking Cold War. There were enemies, son. You know what I mean? And like, yo, we were also at war in Vietnam at that point. Again, it's there's not a lot of ways to win 100% of the vote. Let's keep rocking.
you just like just sort of this like, oh, just like this sort of like last minute ditch attempt that is like the metaphor of like all sort of like like political attempts. Like it's just really risky and it's very sexy, and we love sexy, right? There's just nothing sexier than seeing like a basketball player like hit a fadeaway three. It's just, it's like it's sexy, right? But the thing is that like the thing is, wow, that was not even English. The thing is that like fadeaway threes like lead, have just led to a bunch of losers, and like losing isn't sexy, right? Like all of these sort of attempts by like, Che Guevara, like, sort of like how he, he just like, he's like working in the fields, like this guerrilla warfare. He's got the, he's like smoking, and like, he's like so hot. And like, it's just like, it's just, he's just all like, he like it's just like they've just lost, right? Like, like FDR lost, right? Insofar that like he had a goal of like reorienting the country to like a sustainable state of yes, he lost, right? Like he lost, right? And so if we were to go back to Vivek, and like, he's very smart, he's very well intentioned, but he's idiotic in the sense that he's just like not scoping this problem like nearly appropriately, and that's fine because like no one has, like, you know,
He understands exactly what he's doing. Like real shit. He 100% understands what he's doing. All right. Number one, what he's doing is like he's building political capital, right? And he's building basically kinetic energy for an influencer. Imagine, a guy, who's now a household name and everybody fucking understands who he is, and he ran for president and all that type of stuff. Can you parlay that into fucking cash on the internet? Can you keep your political donations that you get? Can you end up dropping out of the race? You know what I'm saying? And shaking some things your way a little bit. Yes, you can. So he knows exactly what he's doing. He knows he's not going to win. Right? He 100% knows he's not going to win. Right? But on the off chance that like Trump ends up in jail, right, which would be like a fucking, a constitutional crisis of ours, was like, wait a minute, the front runner of our fucking political, like election is in fucking jail. The guy who's going to be president, right? Like if Trump gets elected, right, he's on the ticket and he's in jail. Hmm. All of a sudden, like, well, he has to be pushed off the ballot because like he's not eligible to be president because he's in jail, right? Like Vivek, like is the front runner after that, like oh, he's the guy who takes the reins, and now he's in a national debate. Like how much money did Al Gore make making all them fucking videos about the polar bears and the glaciers and shit, right? He's flying around in private jets, going to the WHO, right? This dude all of a sudden becomes like part of the Federalist Society, and he's speaking and doing all this stuff. He's getting 500,000 a speech, or 100,000, or $1,000, or 20,000. Who gives a fuck? Whatever number of $1,000 he's getting for a speech. Parlays it into money. He knows what he's doing. It's a win, 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 win for him, right? At the end of the day. So like, let's not pretend that, like if he's throwing up a fadeaway three, like this is calculated. There's money in this politics shit. Like the monarchy is always motherfucking, profitable. Let's keep rocking.
so not only does he not realize that like he's taking a fadeaway three, like instead of sort of like setting himself up to take 15 like free throw shots, like not only that, like he doesn't actually realize that he needs to make like four fadeaway threes in the row, right? Like the first fadeaway three he's trying to make is like he's just trying to get into office, right? And like that's the one that like Trump, like in the most sexy fashion ever, he nailed it, right? Trump said, "Fuck it, I'm gonna go for it." He ran for office and he did it. He got it. He nailed that fadeaway three. It was a buzzer beater. It was hot. Then when he got there, he then needed to take another fadeaway three with this sort of approach that, he took and every other government took, all these other politicians take, where they're like, fuck it, I'm going to go for it. And like, I'm going to try to make change, right? And that's sort of like where Trump failed last time, right? And when I say change, I mean like real, like level change, and sort of like, if you sort of if you do that, then you get to the next mountain and you take the next fadeaway three, and this is where you're like in, FDR, like Lee Kuan Yew, like, this guy in El Salvador, like, just like big man sort of like type of change where, like, it's very clear that like there's competence in the government's doing good, and like you've like actually made change where like people are like walking down the street and they can like notice the change, right? Like that's the next sort of like fadeaway three, right? And that's sort of like where we've seen like the great men of history sort of like that's where that's as far as they've made it, right? No one's made it this sort of like, fourth sort of like, no one sort of like crossed a sort of like threshold from like, FDR making change for like, a few decades, maybe, I'm sure there's historical examples where people did this for like, I'm, sure there's many more where people done it for a few hundred years. Um, I'm sure there's possibly even more than that, but not sort of like, not not in a way in which like, our great grandkids like, are actually doing things right, like are actually living in a society, where we feel like that our great grandkids are living in a society where like, we have confidence that they're going to live in a place that's actually better, right? And so like sort of like it's just like the conceptual metaphor behind sort of like the event of entering politics, like even for, the smartest, most competent guy for Vivek, it's just so deeply, it's so deeply wrong. Um, um, I talked about this, but yeah, like no one's ever sort of hit this like fourth, fade away, and so, shot of like making sustainable change, and so society has been, no. And the reason why you
Okay, so like let's talk about this because I can give some, you know what I'm saying, like really basic examples. All right, so let me give you some examples of some guys, you know what I mean, who I feel like, you know, have made major contributions to like history in the, 200 and 300 years period type of thing, right? You know, I mean, first off, let's go with Alexander Hamilton. You know, like let's keep this 100% honest here. If it wasn't for Alexander Hamilton, like our Constitution would not look like what our Constitution looked like. You know, we would not have like modern banking technology, a lot of the things that we have today. You know what I mean? Jefferson, of course, you know what I'm saying, with the Declaration of Independence and, just his in general libertarian ideology. Adams, you know what I mean, for having the fortitude and, I mean, like forward thinking ideas that, I mean, of politics to understand that, you have to have like a strong head of state to fight against the aristocrats in the legislature. John Locke, like, come on, man, like the amount of like just shit that, he is fully responsible for today is unbelievable. Machiavelli, come on, bro. Like, I'm gonna bring up Machiavelli at the end of the day. Like, of course, you know what I'm saying. Willem Kaiser, you know what I mean. Like, come on, like, get it right. Willem Kaiser did so much for history that changed Germany's path, you know what I mean, for just, like a century to come. And then Otto von Bismarck, you know what I mean, who is responsible for Germany being a state today, you know what I mean, just as in a general thing. Like, these are all men, you know what I mean, who have affected history throughout the years, you know what I mean, through long periods of time. You know what I mean? So there's plenty of examples, you know what I mean? Like, but you just gotta like kind of think about them, you know what I mean, a little bit. Let's keep rocking.
can't make, hit this like fadeaway shot is just because, it's just because you haven't figured out how to build like non-pathogenic human institutions, right? Like you just haven't, right? Um, and so it's like, when I look at like who I find to be like a very, smart thinker in sort of political discourse, I look at like Curtis Yarvin, and people sort of take him as this like inflammatory, sort of like, thinker, but like, and he uses like words like monarchy and, like rights in a certain way, but like I think that's all kind of irrelevant. I think like the thing that Yarvin has done that is most important is sort of he sort of like talked about like the level of energy needed to go from trying to make change like Trump to like actually making change for some time.
Well, I love Yarvin. I love Yarvin. I know a lot of y'all don't like it. Same people don't really like Xeon. Okay, let me explain this. I can. I I've been taught to glean jewels from anybody, right? Somebody, anybody who's willing to offer you wisdom and jewels, like you just take it and you shut the fuck up, right? You don't have to agree with any of their political stances in any way, shape, or form. But if they're saying some shit that's informative to you that you didn't know, that adds to you as a human, you take that and you walk with it. You know what I mean? Like it's that simple. You take that and you fucking walk with it and you eat. Like I don't know why it is like people have such a hard time gleaning information from other people. You know what I mean? Who like they just in general don't like listening to. I mean, I get it. Like I can't stomach academic agent. Like his voice is nails on a chalkboard to me. But you know, I have people bring me information from like at least I used to all the time, especially DK now. Let's keep rocking them.
Meaning like Yarvin has basically been like, okay, if you actually want to like reorient the country from a state of no to a state of yes, like you need to shut down institutions, or you need to shut down government agencies, you need to open up new ones, you need a completely new political class, and sort of here are sort of like how to sort of think about that. And so basically what he's sort of said, and this is right, is sort of that like you need a lot of power, you need a lot of power to like size up the situation, like only organized power can defeat organized power, right? But so in a lot of ways, like sort of like Vivek, he's just wrong. Because what we've sort of missed and we've continuously missed is sort of like power is not competence, right? Like there's a lot of people who have a lot of power, but they don't there's no one in this country that like sort of has the competence to sort of like easily like rewrite our legal system. And I don't even mean like meaning like like if I
Okay, let me say this right. There are people in this country with the power to do things, right? There are. The problem that we have is, right, this is highly important to understand. We have a system, right, that would stop you from reorganizing the judicial system, right, as an in general thing, namely like the Supreme Court and the Congress and the people, right, as a whole. So our ideology of this, right, is misunderstood and miscued, right, as an in general thing, right? Because like we're not like the problem is that we don't really have the ability to gain consensus on things because of how atomized we are, right? As people, like we've become so fucking atomized at this point that we just don't have the ability or the wherewith, like we don't have the comprehension or the the shared experiences that would allow us to be able to get behind anybody who's running for office, right? And even on like a most basic level of people standing here going like, yo, like, all right, so the Oliver Anthony song came out. He was like, I'm working overtime hours for bullshit pay, right? I had a dude literally like because I reacted to the video. I had a dude come in and go like, "Oh, that guy was trash. You should listen to this old one." Like, yo, man, listen, shut the fuck up. Like, goddamn, bro. Like, Jesus fucking Christ, homie. Like, can we not agree on anything? Like, at all, bro? Like, yo, I love you, Boston. You know what I'm saying? I love you, bro. Like, I do. But just, Jesus fucking Christ, man. You know what I mean? Like, it was a great song. And I love fucking bluegrass. You know what I mean? I'm a fucking huge fan. You know what I mean? This Appalachian fucking music as a whole, right? Goddamn cat, I swear to God. All right, let's keep rocking.
if I take someone like Peter Thiel or someone of that of that capacity, of that like sort of thought of level of power, like, could he like, rewrite our legal system in a way in which like, we actually thought the legal system was like a few step functions better, and like the legal system wasn't gonna be, a system that would be pathogenic over time. Like that competence is not there. Like, does any billionaire have the competence like to build a better like CNN or New York Times? Does any billionaire like have the competence like to easily like put together like a new Wikipedia, right? Like does any like, like billionaire have like the competence like to go out and launch like, dozens of high performing institutions? Like, no, this is not something we've seen. We see people that have a lot of resources, right, that have a lot of money, but like these things like, people that have a lot of influences, but like what these things ultimately are is they're surrogates, right? They're sort of levers for labor coordination. But when you are in an environment, which we are, in which you get worse at building institutions as we currently have, um, no matter how much sort of like money or sort of, sort of like money or influence you have, your translation to take money and influence and translate that into like, the sort of like effective labor coordination, like to build the type of competence needed to reorient society from a state of no to state of yes. It's just like not even there, and it's like not even close. Um, and so, sort of like all of this sort of like, thinking about entering government to acquire power, like, and that's sort of, again, that's how everyone who wants to make change, like at a, at sort of this like, you know, like FDR, Trump, Lee Kuan Yew type of level, that, like everyone who thinks about entering government to acquire power as like the lever in which they are going to deal with the situation is sort of thinking in this sort of like, fade away three sort of like mindset. I'm going to, get there, and like, I'm going to have, 4 years on the clock, right? Which might as well be like, 2 seconds on the clock in an MBA equivalent. And like, I'm going to somehow like, figure out how to like, change things up. Right. And it's like, I forget, it was like, I think it was like the American Enterprise Institute was like one of these like Republican, or it was one of these like think tanks, like, wrote, this like 700-page document for Reagan, where they were like, and you could read it. It's online, where it's just like, okay, like, Reagan, like, here's what you're going to do when like you're going to get into government. Like, here's like how you're going to think about like every single agency. And like, you sort of like read this document and you like compare it to like, like NASA's like, spaceship systems engineering document. And like what you realize, and then you compare it to like, Bolton's book on sort of like what it was like in like Trump's administration. Like what you realize is that like, you know, sort of the organizational competence that like Reagan came in was like about 100 times more than like what Trump came in. And what the organizational competence that Reagan came into was like, 1,000 times less than like the quality of, systems thinking that you see out of like NASA's like engineering group. And then what you really see is that like NASA systems engineering thinking is actually just like still like 1,000 times worse, or like 1,000 times not, like just not competent enough to deal with the complexity of the situation, right? And so it's all a joke. It's all just a joke, and that's okay. But to look at it, it's just really important to look at a cup and say a cup is a cup and a cup is not, a boat, right? And we have to look at things for what they are. And so again, thinking about entering government to acquire power is thinking like fadeaway threes. And so the most important thing to do is to set up LeBron to take up 15 free throw shots. We don't have LeBron. LeBron doesn't exist today. Getting him to take 15 free throw shots means like putting ourselves in a situation in which entering government, installing a new political class is like as inevitable as like, me going to eat, food later today. Like it's just so inevitable. It's like, it's actually just, it's unquestionable that like it's going to happen, right? Because if that is just like, if you're not coming with that amount of energy, you're just LARPing. You're just LARPing. Um, and so, like, like, every smart idiot thought about entering government to acquire power. instead of entering government with the right amount of competence. If I'm gonna go fight, in a boxing match, right? I'm not gonna enter the boxing match until I have like confidence that I'm good enough, right? That I've actually earned the ability to win that boxing match, right? If I'm gonna try to beat, if I'm gonna try to beat, Michael Jordan in a game of one-on-one, I'm not going to actually try to like play Michael Jordan in a game of one-on-one until I am good enough to be able to do that, right? Like, and sort of, no one thinks in this way because, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why, but like it's not about trying to like, build this, shoot this fadeaway three, like hope you get it, and then be in government and like hope you can make some change for like some period of time. Like you're just like not understanding like how much competence is actually needed to deal with the situation. Right. And again, that's competence to make a sustainable change. Right. And then again, that's to build a society that is a society where like people, irregardless of like where they are, like, and sort of, just like living things, just like are just like, are looking around and saying like, wow, this is just like vastly, vastly, vastly better, right? The way that like, some things are just vastly, vastly better than others, right? Right. And not just vastly, vastly better, but vastly, vastly better in a way that is actually sustainable, right? And again, like the competence to make sustainable change, right? It means solving this problem, right? Which is that we actually don't know how to build non-pathogenic institutions. And so said differently, and I've said this like a few times now, but I'm going to say it again. Like if entering office does not feel like a cakewalk, if entering office does not feel like, just like going to get the groceries, then like you're not going to fix the education system. You're not. And like, if fixing the education,
Okay, well, democracy. Okay, that's why Yarvin says, you know what I mean, like, yo, fucking democracy, right? It's dumb, right? It is a dumb thing. I'd like to hear you explain to me how you get a consensus from the majority, like the overwhelming majority. At least 90% of people agree with what you want. You'd have to win at least 48 states to do what you're talking about doing, which I'm fine with. You know what I mean? I just don't think anybody could do it. I mean, like, this is an opportunity thing, right? At the end of the day. So like this is one of those like Michael Burry shorting the markets once in a lifetime type of deals, right? We're like, all right, yeah, I'm gonna start with like, 100 million, I'm gonna make like fucking 8 billion, right? Off of this play. That's what this is. Like real shit, right? That's not gonna happen every day. That's only gonna happen once in a lifetime. So what I just don't see it, man. I just don't. I might be black pilled, bro. Like I just feel like I'm black pilled right now because I don't see you convincing neoliberals and a whole bunch of people who trained to be in this system rooting for another one. I don't fucking see it. Right? Like real shit. You know what I mean? Like I don't see them voting for an idea that, and this is the problem, right? So again, 20 million human beings work for the fucking government, not just the federal government, state too, but like, why are you knocking everything off of my shelf, right? 20 million human beings work for the government. You're gonna convince them 20 million? What about all the people who got college educations to be in this system? They're gonna basically just tell them they're just worthless at this point. This is, I don't think you can do it, bro. I'll be honest with you. I don't think. And again, what are you offering, right? And you go like, turn over from a no to a yes. Well, what's a yes look like? Oh, well, they're living a better life. Well, of course they do. I fucking hope so. You know what I mean? Right? Like, what are you offering them? I feel like what we need is artificial difficulty, and they're not going to vote for artificial difficulty. Like, they'll riot if you don't give them food stamps. They'll riot if you take away their free gifts for Social Security and Medicare. Remember, you know what I mean? Like, a rah rah, keep your hands off my government, keep your hands off my Medicare, right? I don't know, bro. I'm gonna tell you what. Watch like 47 minutes out of your 103-minute video. You know what I mean? I'm gonna shut this bitch down because I'm tired. You know what I mean? I gotta go do things. All right, I'm gonna holla at y'all later. Peace, you like one. I'm out.